On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, we look at the defensive side of the ball. There is some concerns there with Jimmie Ward. Is it panic time? But positives, linebacker core play much better than we expected. So we dive into that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Wednesday Hump Day episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our everydayers coming back to listen to Cody and myself talk Texans. If this is your first time, we appreciate it. Come on in. Please do us 3 favors on the road to 10K. Subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm your Texans football analyst down here in Houston, John, some sports guy Hickman. Up there in Detroit, up north, Cody Davis. We're talking Texans today. Before we do so, guys, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, only a couple of weeks left. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Cody, without further ado, take us away.
And on this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans, look, I think at some point the Houston Texans and Desmond King, they finally got to call it quits, because at this point, it's getting real toxic between those two people. And look,
what's my boy name from back in the day? Casey and Mary J. Blige. This type of relationship they got.
Yeah. It's
Biggie and Lil Kim. It's getting. Y'all need to leave each other alone for the sake of our mental.
Exactly, but something keep pulling them back. But look, we're going to dive into those rumors later on in the show. But as John alluded to, on this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans, we're going to revisit the Houston Texans 29-27 victory over the Indianapolis Colts, because there was so much to take away from that. And majority of it was positive, and we're going to get into that in today's show. We talked about the offense on yesterday. Today, we're going to talk about the defense. And John, before we dive into this topic, I want you to listen to what you just said on Monday's installment of Locked On Texans. John, I do want to ask you this. When you look at Anthony Richardson and you look at the fact that he had about 5 passes that went 20 or more yards, he had, I think, 3 that went like 50 or more yards. Do you think it's time to have somewhat of a little bit of concern for the secondary?
Nope, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned right now.
First off,
all the OGs out there.
Yes, sir.
Listening to the show since we took over. That's a great feeling to hear that instrumental.
I know,
but I'm still not necessarily concerned right now.
Yeah. But I would like to say this. I understand in that clip that I just played that I was speaking about the Houston Texans secondary as a whole, because I was looking at what Anthony Richardson had did. What I think he had about 4 or 5 passes that went over 30 yards, somewhere along those lines. But John, a lot of people are now looking at Jimmie Ward, and I think that's where the concern is starting to come when you take a look at this secondary. Because first and foremost, regardless of how you feel about the secondary, where you think it's time to hit the panic button or not, Jimmie Ward is still a very important piece to the Houston Texans secondary. He's one of 2 starting safeties, to say the least. And when you go back and you take a look at Sunday's game, a lot of the deficiencies that we saw in that secondary, in that safety unit, came from him. Remember, when Anthony Richardson connected with Alex Pierce for a 60-yard bomb, majority of that mistake was on Jimmie Ward. And I do want to say this as well, John. The Houston Texans extended him at the time. I didn't really think it was that much of a good move, but I was just looking at it from a standpoint where he is a veteran and given his experience, maybe the Houston Texans are just keeping him around just for that alone. However, even though I had my doubts, what did I say in training camp when he was doing all that fighting and carrying on? I said what I don't want to see. Exactly. I don't want to see you hooping and hollering, walking around like you miss a tough guy in practice when you're going up against your teammates. And then when the regular season starts, you a shell of your former self. We're not even 2 weeks into the 2024 season, and that's exactly what we saw. I'm going to take a step back, but John, I really do think when you take a look at this secondary, I'm starting to believe that Jimmie Ward is the person that makes me a little bit concerned about that unit, even more so by the fact, and I want to say this, I was wrong. Caleb Bullock is him.
Oh, yeah. That he is. The question, is it time to give up on Jimmie Ward? And I do want to give a lot of love to the listeners and viewers because you guys
and Cody M. Davis.
And Cody M. Davis, but you guys were in the comment section not only giving a lot of love to Kean Green, but also pointing out the fact that, you know, Jimmie Ward had a rough day. And I'm glad, because we all like to reference PFF. I'm glad PFF didn't attribute that 60-yard Alec Pierce TD to Derek Stingley. I'm glad I didn't see a lot of people saying, man, what's going on with Sting? Now, he did get beat on a double move by Adonai Mitchell. On that double move, we saw Anthony Richardson miss Adonai Mitchell, but I'm glad people didn't attribute that TD, that 60-yarder, to Derek Stingley, because when I look back at that coverage, I can't tell if it's cover 3, cover 4, but the safety has a deep part of the field, and Jimmie Ward just failed the Houston Texans. And I looked at the beginning of that play, and I said, man, I think he needs to just have more depth. Jimmie is older. The last great season we saw from Jimmie Ward 2 seasons ago, was he playing single high safety or was he down in the box playing nickel? Now, for Houston, that kind of put them in a tough place because you got Jalen Petrie down there at nickel. He only allowed 1 catch for 13 yards. He's been playing great, you know, helping his team out against the run and in pass coverage. And I think to get the best version out of him, to maximize his talents, that's where he needs to be. With Jimmie Ward, is it time to give up on Jimmie Ward? Jimmie Ward allowed, let me give you guys the numbers. Jimmie Ward allowed 2 catches for 117 yards, 1 TD. And that's a rough day for a veteran that the Houston Texans really like. They love what he brings on and off the field. Time to give up on Jimmie Ward, though, as a question, I'm going to still say right now, no, because where can Houston go? Do you move Jalen Petrie back? Do you just give more opportunities to the rookie Caleb Bullock, who on his interception, single high safety, only got back there? And when we talked about Bullock this entire offseason, and I know this is one thing that I love, he's rangy. He can cover sideline to sideline, hash to hags, anything in between the you can go get it. But what do you need to do when you have to put another safety back there for some cases? So I don't know if it's time to give up on Jimmie. Maybe looking at a specific role that will help, like Jalen Petrie, maximize what Jimmie Ward can do. Whether that may be disguising coverages. I don't know, going out there and cover 2 and disguise that, and it's actually cover 3. And then you have the rookie Caleb Bullock. He'll just cover the deep thirds of the field. And you look at Jimmie Ward maybe covering the curls, slants, right? Maybe just having the ball in front of him is what may help him maximize his full potential at this stage in his career. And for Houston, that may be what helps the defense out. Because right now, and this is dating back to training camp, this is dating back to the draft season, who do you trust more back deep, single high? It's the rookie. He's younger, he's faster, he's more rangier. He can do things back there that at this stage in his career, I don't believe Jimmie Ward could do. So I don't know if it comes down to just disguising coverages. I don't know if it comes down to just limiting the amount of snaps that Jimmie Ward gets. But right now, I don't know where Houston can go to get that extra boost. By the way, we're talking about safeties. One thing I never thought I'd say. Hey, Eric Murray. This was on the Colts side of the field when he came up, beat the tackle, shed it out the tackle, and made that tackle. Beat the block. Eric Murray is a football player, man. And shout out to Eric Murray. I was wrong for 2.5 years, but it's good to see him be I think, a very good contributor for this defense.
You know, it's funny that in this show, when I played that clip, you know, I played our original theme music, and that during the time we was rocking that theme music, John used to come on this show so much and talk about how it sounds for the Houston Texans to cut ties with Eric Murray. And John, I'm glad that you are giving Murray his flowers as of right now, because look, this game was nothing but a continuation from what we saw last year. Remember last year, before he went down with, I think it was an ACL injury, he was balling. That was the best version of Eric Murray that we've seen. And now we've seen him doing the same thing again. I understand it's only been one game and he's going to have to do it for the rest of the entire season. But John, I'm just looking at it from a standpoint that Eric Murray, not only has he had an opportunity to have a franchise to really take their time with him while he develop and get accustomed to everything. But two, and most importantly, it goes back to something that you and I have talked about a lot here on this show when we talk about Coach DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco is a damn good coach, and that is part of the reason why Eric Murray has been thriving ever since DeMeco walked into the door off of 16 and Kirby. By the way, since we're talking about safeties, we're talking about the secondary unit. I mean, I get it. He's your nickel now, but shout out to Jalen Petrie, man. I said it at the start of training camp. I like what I saw out of him on Sunday. I really believe that this is going to be a comeback season for Jalen Petrie. Love what I saw from that young man. Keep doing your thing.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight again, this was on the 2-point conversion. Eric Murray got that tackle when the coach was trying to get the 2 points. So you look at Eric Murray making it just a very big play. Kind of reminds me of the play Desmond King made for the Houston Texans last year down there in the red zone. So, like, you don't have to be a full-time starter. I don't know how many snaps Eric Murray played. I'm sure it was limited, 18 snaps. But you got to be impactful and effective when you're on the field. That's what Eric Murray has been able to give DeMeco Ryans since he was able to play for the Texans and since DeMeco came to coach the Texans. So I gotta eat my words. I got to. Sometimes in this business, people refuse to apologize.
Oh, that's not us. That's not us.
That's not us. Eric Murray, if I had some flowers, I'll probably give you some, just maybe a couple of stems. I ain't gonna give you no whole bouquet. But he played some good football for the Houston Texans in the moments that they needed him to.
Talking about playing football against the Indianapolis Colts, it's time for us to look at the linebacker unit and think to ourselves whether or not this unit is better than what we originally expected.
And before we talk about that, we got to talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We all love a good deal, right? I don't like to pay full price all the time. I like to get hooked up on, right? I like to get in where I can fit in and find something that's a little cheaper than what's going on, or just plain out free. Well, they got something for you guys now through September 22nd. So you only got a couple of weeks to get in on this deal. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season afternoon out-of-market game this year. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. That sounds like a deal. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sports book today. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Really quick, before we talk more Texans, got to let you guys know about the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop, get your fade right with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, as we transition over to the linebacker group coming down from the safety unit, I thought the linebacker group played well. The unit played well. Very, very impressed with Hemi Toa. Very impressed with Azeez Al-Shire, who we've been impressed with all offseason, right? Very impressed with, and I'm going to include Jalen Petrie in this mix, him being that nickel, right? Very impressed with what those guys were able to do for the Houston Texans. And when I look at the Texans overall, what they got out of that unit, you ask yourself, man, did they get more than what we expected with no Christian Harris? I think so. And I think that's because we didn't really know what Henry T was going to be able to do in the regular season game. But going back to that Pittsburgh Steelers game, that game showed me everything I needed to know about Henry T. I think he processed things a whole lot quicker and faster. You don't have to worry about Henry downhill. That's not where you have to worry about him, man. What you have to worry about him, and listen, man, it's 3rd and 8. The team got a pass, and they may be coming your way, right? And that's where the worry was. Didn't see that Sunday. Now, granted, what the Houston Texans were able to do, yeah, we talk about those 3 bombs, the 60, the 57, the 4. We talk about that, right? And one of those bombs was technically on Azeez Al-Shire. He tried to make a play. Sometimes things happen. The Josh Doolin touchdown, I think that was a dig or maybe a deep slant. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Azeez was right there, just made a play. It is what it is. But outside of that, I looked at that linebacker group, and I thought to myself, well, this is why you have DeMeco Ryans, and this is why we probably should have never worried in the first place. Because he got the best out of Christian Harris to close out the year. And one thing that Henry T benefited from was going into this offseason, a full offseason, and another year under DeMeco Ryans. And so now the teaching is there. The year 2 thought process is kicking in. Now you're becoming a better football player. Now you're not just leaving out of college. Now all you are doing is focusing on football. Because he even mentioned I was fat last year. I was a fat ASS last year. I don't want to curse right now, but that's what he said. So now you're seeing him slim up. Now you see him process quicker. Now you're seeing him be in spots that last year would have taken maybe a split second or 2 to get there. He's quicker this year. So I was impressed by Henry T and what he was able to do for the Houston Texans. No Christian Harris for the next 3 games. He's on short-term IR. If this trend continues, I like Houston's chances to continue to be productive from their linebacking core.
Before I give my take, I do want to revisit what Henry T and Coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about his growth and development during training camp.
Henry's been very consistent this time around, and Henry's been a guy that our defense can rely on. He's going to be in the proper position, be where he's supposed to be, and he does a great job with Azeez when it comes to communicating. And that's a huge thing in our defense of communicating, and Henry does a really awesome job of that.
I think confidence is the biggest thing. In this league, you got to be confident in everything you do. So I think my confidence has been consistent every single day, just being able to come out and compete and believing in my abilities and what I can do and contribute to helping this team be the best team that we can. So I try to come with confidence every single day. I got Azeez to lean upon and ask for advice, and he's been huge for me on that part.
I know I said this during training camp, and I'm going to say it again. There's 2 things that have worked out in Henry T's favor for this upcoming season. One, not only is he getting another opportunity, another year to learn and develop under Coach DeMeco Ryans, but he's also doing it next to Azeez. And the one thing that I've noticed about Azeez is the fact that he is literally another teacher, another coach inside that locker room. And every single time you hear Henry T talking about ways that he has grown, ways he's developed, he's always referring back to everything that he learned from Azeez. Not only that, you're looking at a situation where Henry T has more confidence for this upcoming season. And I understand that when we look at these young prospects, especially a prospect like Henry T, who comes from one of the top programs in the nation, a lot of us automatically think when they get drafted, they're going to automatically be the same player, or if not even better than what we saw in college. Sometimes it's not them getting adjusted to the NFL speed or whatever the case might be, or bringing their talent up to the NFL speed. Sometimes it's confidence. And I remember going back to his rookie season last year, there were several moments where Henry T used to sit there and just talk about whether or not he was just thinking too much out there on the field. I don't think he's no longer doing that, man. And I truly do believe that everything that he has learned, everything that he has had an opportunity to do, even John, as you just alluded to, even just working on his body. I mean, there's a guy on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, starting left guard, that looked damn good after he got himself in better shape. You know, it's just those small intangibles like that in order to bring out the best of a young prospect. And I really do believe this year that is what we're going to see from Henry Tour.
You know, shout out to my man John Crumpler. Right now he's on the timeline. He's killing it with the film review, and my takeaway from Henry. Another takeaway is just because we got to highlight Henry, right? We highlighted Kenyon Green, and Laremy Tunsil had a good day on the ground, right? Running behind Laremy Tunsil, Joe Mixon. I think nearly 70 yards behind that way, but Laremy was good.
Yeah, once he got his mind right.
First 2 drives.
Once
he got his mind right. But we highlighted Kenyon Green because it's kind of like we've been waiting on it. But so for Henry, you know, just seeing him scrape as a linebacker, I think he was quicker and better at that. Just seeing him flow in and out of the gaps and read and react quicker, and still doing that and being disciplined. So I don't think it's a linebacker controversy that we're going to have to worry about. I'm not going to say that, but I do believe that once Christian Harris comes back, it is up to Matt Burke and D'Amico Ryans to find ways to do a couple of things. Number one, alleviate a lot of the pressure that may be on his Z's. Just sign a 3-year contract, so you want him on the field. But down that stretch, when Houston starts to play some of those tougher teams, and you're getting the dog time of that schedule, you want to make sure he's fully healthy and fresh. So when Christian Harris comes back, just find ways to get him out on the field at the same time with Henry. But how creative can they get in order to dial up pressures and disguise coverages? So I'm excited about that. I think Houston has 2 good masterminds, defensive guys that can get it done. Overall, yeah, the linebacker unit was better than what we expected. What I expected, because I just wanted to see what Henry did against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cody, listeners and viewers, I wanted to see that in a regular game.
Well, now it's time for us to look at whether or not the Houston Texans and Desmond King have a toxic relationship, because they keep leaving and coming back, coming back. So we're going to talk about that.
He was a friend of mine. What's the song? What's it?
We're going to talk about that and then give a quick preview for the Chicago Bears Sunday night game. Locked on Texans, more to come.
And this is also the perfect time to let you guys in on a little secret from eBay. They got everything you need for your car. It ain't just going to shop for retro jerseys no more, or shoes. eBay Motors has you covered. They have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the CJ Stroud, and I am talking about the MVP of the road, and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available for U.S. customers.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday.
Every time I see you, I get a bad vibe.
No, by the way, I think Avant is one of the most underrated singers of all time.
Is underrated.
Man. Not only can he sing, not only can he sing, but he got a lot of bangers, and that's one of them, man. But Desmond King, for the second time in 2 years now, the Houston Texans cut him for cut down day, and they're going to bring him back. And yesterday morning was very weird because our good friend Aaron Wilson was the first to report that the Houston Texans were signing Desmond King to the practice squad roster. Shortly after that, Desmond King tweets, and I'm going to short it. And this tweet has since been deleted. For the record, I did not sign anything with an exclamation point behind it. And then about an hour went by, he deleted it and came back with another tweet that said somewhere along the lines of how he values himself as a player and all that other good stuff. And John, as he should. And I really do think something is really brewing between the Houston Texans and Desmond King. Maybe something fell through with a contract and agreement or whatever the case might be. But ladies and gentlemen, do not be surprised if and when you hear the news that Desmond King has been brought back to the Houston Texans, especially considering that Desmond King, and look, he first got here with the Houston Texans in the trade November of 2020. And John, you've heard me say this time and time again, every time we talk about Desmond King. It didn't matter if they were one of the worst teams in the league, or it didn't matter if they was beating a mess out of the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs. Desmond King was always giving this team something on the defensive side of the ball. And he was always not only one of my favorite players to cover, but he was always one of my favorite players to watch because he just always went out there and balled. He was one of those guys that was going to always go out there and do his job. But I just don't know what is going on when you start cut down day. Remember, John, last year when he got cut during cut down day, it was a surprise. This year, everybody, including you and I, was like, yeah, the relationship between him and the Texans are done. That was literally a month ago when it seemed like he gave up in that final preseason game against the Los Angeles Rams. So Don't know what's going on there. Like I mentioned, don't be surprised if you hear the Houston Texans are bringing Desmond King back. I wouldn't be surprised if that news dropped today, but it's something to keep an eye out on for sure.
Yeah, and the Houston Texans, instead of immediately signing Desmond King back to the practice squad, they signed Troy Pride Jr. to their practice squad, excuse me. So the Houston Texans went ahead and got that done. Jeff Okudah is hurt, I believe, right now. Still, I mean, shout out to Kamari Lassiter, who only allowed one catch. Did have a couple of moments where you're glad the quarterback wasn't able to connect with the receiver, but I thought he had a good and impressive debut. Yeah, Desmond King is I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, for Houston, it's kind of like, do you move on? What do you do if you're the Texans? Tweet, delete.
I mean, at this point, I would say so. Because first of all, you're not going to see reports that somebody has resigned just for nothing, especially if it's somebody like our good friend Aaron Wilson. But that's why I'm thinking like maybe something wasn't agreed upon that they thought. I don't know. It was just a weird situation on yesterday, and I'm just looking at it from a standpoint. Look, especially when you consider that, as you mentioned, Jeff Okudah is out. We just finished talking about, whether or not it's time to be concerned for the secondary, whatever the case might be. In my opinion, I think the Houston Texans will be better off in a sense adding Desmond King back to their roster because, like I mentioned, regardless how you feel about him, I guess unless it's preseason, he's always going to go out there and do his job. And that's something he's been doing for this organization since November of 2020.
The relationship between Desmond King and the Houston Texans feels like Johnny Taylor's running out of lies. Y'all know y'all want to go somewhere else, but y'all ain't no fool. But I do want to shout out to the Houston Texans going to Madden Elementary in South Park. We read a story that British Brooks, Xavier Hutchinson, and Wade Smith went by to launch the reading program at Madden. So that means a lot to me personally. But quick preview of this Chicago Bears game. Chicago beat the Tennessee Titans, the AFC South running mate, 24-17. And how did they do so? Well, it wasn't by great quarterback play from the rookie Caleb Williams. He was 14
first game.
93 sacks, a QBR of 23, a quarterback rating of 55. It wasn't because of their ability to run the football. 22 carries, 84 yards as a team, 3.8 yards per catch. It wasn't because of any awesome playmakers on the outside. DJ Moore leading way, 5 catches, 36 yards, nothing crazy. It was because they were able to create turnovers and get after the quarterback. 2 interceptions by Will Levis, also a fumble by Will Levis. So you look at 3 turnovers right there, 3 sacks, 1 interception to the house for the Houston Texans. Every team in the NFL you got to respect. If not, you're going to end up looking like how they played the Carolina Panthers last year, or when they let Zach Wilson go crazy for them.
Please
crazy
stop.
on them
Please
in
don't
the second half.
Up.
But that was last year, new year.
No.
How can the Houston Texans, in a quick preview, not suffer that same fate, right? Because I look at this team, if it's a new era, new attitude, new aura about this team, you got to get some of that stench off you from last year, right? You can clean up for IG, but the stench is on you, and you got to clean yourself up. How can you do that? You cannot lose this game by allowing the Bears to dictate the line of scrimmage and allowing the Bears to force you into bad field position or bad turnovers. And CJ had one crazy throw. Defender came down with the ball, but foot was not all the way on the inside on the field, so that negated it. But for Houston, just a quick preview, no turnovers. Now, luckily, Houston has CJ. They don't have Will Levis. Luckily, the play caller is more experienced, and luckily they have a better defense, I think, right now than the Tennessee Titans. But the Tennessee Titans scored a couple of points off turnovers. That can't be the case for Houston. Thank y'all for watching and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Give me a follow on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Throw me some questions my way on Twitter. I got some time tomorrow or today to answer them.
As always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at Cody Davis _24. Once again, it's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.